I was 35 years old, driving home with a secret that was about to change everything. An $11 million inheritance from an uncle I barely knew. I pictured my husband Eric's face, the years of financial stress melting away. But as I rehearsed the words, my world didn't just change, it shattered. I woke up in a hospital bed, my body broken, my husband nowhere to be found. When he finally walked back into my life, he wasn't alone. And the woman with him looked at me and screamed 5 words that would unravel a secret I thought was buried forever. If you're watching this now, please hit like, subscribe, and let me know where you're watching from. Join me as I share how my life fell apart and was pieced back together in ways I never could have imagined. My relationship with my Uncle James was complicated, to say the best. He was my father's older brother, but they had a falling out decades ago over the family business. The rift was so deep that our families barely acknowledged each other at the rare holiday gathering. Despite this, I had fond memories of visiting his sprawling countryside estate as a child. Those brief visits always felt magical, with Uncle James showing me his collection of rare books and telling stories of his business adventures abroad. Uncle James was a self-made millionaire who built an empire in real estate development. His business acumen was legendary in our small town, but his personal life was notably empty. He never married or had children, throwing himself completely into his work instead. What I didn't know until much later was that he had been secretly keeping tabs on me through the years. "You remind me of myself at your age," he once told me during one of our rare meetings when I was 12. "Smart, stubborn, and not afraid to speak your mind." After I graduated college and moved away, Uncle James began sending me birthday cards and occasional letters. I would respond politely but briefly, unsure how to bridge the family divide. The letters contained mundane updates about his life, business insights, and occasional questions about mine. I never realized he was carefully building a connection with me, the niece he barely knew. 6 months before the accident, Uncle James was diagnosed with advanced heart disease. When I heard the news from a distant cousin, I decided to visit him at the hospital. I remember how frail he looked, a shadow of the imposing figure from my childhood. Yet his eyes lit up when I walked into the room. "Morgan," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I always knew you would come back." That visit turned into weekly ones. We talked about everything from philosophy to politics, making up for lost time. He never mentioned the feud with my father, and I never asked. It was as if we had silently agreed to start fresh. "Life is too short for grudges," he told me during one of our last conversations. I learned that lesson too late. 3 months later, he passed away peacefully in his sleep. I mourned him more deeply than I expected to. As for Eric, our love story began 7 years ago at an art exhibition downtown. I was there writing a piece for the local lifestyle magazine where I worked. Eric was one of the featured artists, his abstract paintings drawing considerable attention. He had this confidence about him, a passion when he spoke about his work that was magnetic. "Art is about seeing the world differently," he said when I interviewed him. "Finding beauty in chaos." We started dating shortly after, and within a year, we were married in a small ceremony. We couldn't afford anything lavish, but it was perfect for us. Eric was determined to make it as an artist, and I supported his dream wholeheartedly. I took a more stable job at an advertising agency to keep us afloat financially while he pursued galleries and commissions. For the first few years, things were wonderful despite our financial struggles. We lived in a modest apartment, saved where we could, and dreamed about the future. Eric would paint late into the night while I edited copy for ad campaigns. We were partners, each playing our part. But the last 2 years had been different. Eric's artistic career remained stagnant, and the rejection seemed to change him. He became moody, withdrawn, and sometimes disappeared for hours without explanation. When questioned, he would snap that he needed space to think or was networking with other artists. Our bank account dwindled as he invested in expensive materials for projects that never seemed to materialize. "You just don't understand the artistic process," became his standard response to any questions about money or his whereabouts. I was at work when I received the call from Benjamin Harrison, Uncle James's attorney. "Morgan Wallace. This is Benjamin Harrison. I'm handling the estate of James Wallace. Would you be available to come to my office today?" I agreed, expecting perhaps a small memento or letter. When Benjamin slid the will across his desk, I nearly fell out of my chair. Uncle James had left me everything. His entire estate, valued at $11 million, plus the family property. He revised his will after your reconciliation, Benjamin explained. He was quite impressed with how you had built your life on your own terms. Attached to the will was a letter in Uncle James's handwriting. Dear Morgan, if you're reading this, I've moved on to whatever comes next. I've watched you grow from afar, admiring your determination and kind heart. You have the same spark I once had, but with the wisdom I lacked. This money is a tool, not a solution. Use it well, be happy, and remember that true wealth isn't measured in dollars. With love, your Uncle James. I signed the necessary paperwork in a daze. $11 million. It was an unfathomable amount. I could pay off our debts. Eric could pursue his art without financial pressure. We could buy a house, travel, start a family. The possibilities were endless. On my way out, I stopped at a jewelry store and purchased an expensive watch for Eric, a symbol of our new beginning. I decided not to tell him over the phone. I called him anyway, just to say I was coming home early with good news. He sounded distracted, almost annoyed. I'm kind of in the middle of something, Morgan. A new art project. Very experimental. This is important, Eric. I'll be home in 30 minutes. Fine. Just don't expect much reaction. I'm in my creative zone. I hung up, feeling slightly deflated but still excited. Once he heard the news, his mood would surely change. Little did I know that call would be one of our last normal conversations. The rain had just started as I pulled onto the highway, a light drizzle that made the road gleam under the afternoon sun. I remember turning on the radio, some upbeat song playing as I mentally rehearsed how I would tell Eric about the inheritance. Maybe I would make him close his eyes, place the watch in his hands, and then share the incredible news. I imagined his face lighting up, the stress of recent years melting away as he realized we were financially free. I was so consumed with these thoughts that I almost missed seeing it happen. A semi-truck 2 lanes over suddenly swerved, its tires skidding on the wet pavement. Time seemed to slow as I watched it jackknife, the massive trailer swinging toward me like some terrible pendulum. I jerked the wheel hard to the right, but it was too late. The impact was deafening. Metal crunched against metal as my car spun violently. The airbag exploded into my face with shocking force. Through the chaos, I remember seeing the watch box fly open, the expensive timepiece sliding across the dashboard in slow motion. My last conscious thought was strangely about a roadside billboard advertising family insurance with the tagline, "Protect what matters most." Then darkness. I awoke to the steady beep of heart monitors and the antiseptic smell that only hospitals have. My entire body felt like it had been run through a meat grinder. Even breathing sent sharp pains through my chest. I tried to move and immediately regretted it. "Easy there," a gentle voice cautioned. "You need to stay still." I forced my eyes to focus on the woman in blue scrubs standing beside my bed. Her name tag read Sarah Winters, RN. "What happened?" My voice came out as a rasp. "You were in a serious accident on Highway 65, Sarah explained, checking one of my 4 lines. "You've been unconscious for almost 2 days. 2 days? The information landed like a brick. My husband, does Eric know I'm here? Sarah's expression shifted subtly. We contacted the emergency number in your phone. We've left several messages, but he hasn't come. Even in my drugged state, I felt a stab of confusion. Not yet, but I'm sure he will soon, she added, though her tone lacked conviction. Later that day, Dr. Daniel Foster came to explain the extent of my injuries. 3 broken ribs, a severe concussion, a compound fracture in my right leg requiring surgical pins, and various lacerations and contusions. I would need weeks of hospitalization, followed by months of physical therapy. You were extraordinarily lucky, he said. The driver of the truck that hit you didn't survive. Lucky? I didn't feel lucky as I lay there, unable to reach my husband. I tried calling Eric's phone repeatedly, but it went straight to voicemail. I sent text messages that showed as delivered but remained unanswered. Each passing hour without a response amplified my anxiety. Sarah became my primary nurse and, increasingly, my confidant. She would check on me even when not assigned to my room, bringing extra pudding cups or just sitting with me when her shift allowed. Still no word? She asked on the third day, helping me sit up to eat. I shook my head, wincing at the movement. I don't understand. Even if his phone died, he would know something was wrong when I didn't come home. On day 4, I finally received a text from Eric. Heard about accident. Really busy with breakthrough project. Will visit when things calm down. No questions about my condition. No offer to help. Just nothing. That doesn't sound right. Sarah frowned when I showed her the message. Do you have friends who could check on him? I called my friend Melanie, but she sounded strange on the phone, making excuses about why she couldn't visit yet. When I pressed her about Eric, she quickly changed the subject. By the end of the first week, I had become increasingly suspicious. Using Sarah's tablet, I checked social media and found something that made my blood run cold. Eric had checked in at Artemis Gallery, an exclusive art club known for its wealthy patrons, with a caption about celebrating new beginnings. With shaking hands, I called his number again. This time he answered. What? His voice was annoyed, with music playing in the background. Eric, I'm in the hospital. I've been here for a week. Where are you? A pause. Look, Morgan. I'm in the middle of something important. More important than your wife being in critical condition? Another pause, longer this time. When he spoke again, his voice had changed, become colder. I don't have time or money for a loser, Morgan. Some of us are moving forward with our lives. The phone went dead. I stared at it in disbelief, tears streaming down my face. What did he mean, loser? I had just inherited $11 million. And more importantly, I was his wife, injured and alone. Sarah found me sobbing an hour later and immediately called for a sedative. As the medication took effect, dulling both physical and emotional pain, one thought kept circling in my foggy mind. Something was very, very wrong. The days following Eric's cruel phone call were the darkest of my life. I refused food, barely slept, and cried until I had no tears left. The physical pain of my injuries paled in comparison to the emotional devastation. 7 years of marriage, and this was how it ended. With a dismissal so cold it felt like talking to a stranger. Sarah became concerned enough to call in Dr. Jessica Parker, the hospital's psychologist. A petite woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, Jessica didn't offer empty platitudes. What you are experiencing is trauma on multiple levels, she explained during our first session. Physical injury, emotional betrayal, and the shock of sudden abandonment. It's normal to feel like you're drowning. Did he know? I asked aloud, not really expecting an answer. About the money, I mean. What money? Jessica asked. I hadn't told anyone at the hospital about my inheritance. It seemed unimportant compared to everything else happening. But now, I wondered if it was the key to understanding Eric's behavior. I inherited $11 million the day of my accident, I explained. I was on my way to tell Eric when the crash happened. Jessica's eyebrows shot up. That certainly adds another dimension to consider. 2 days later, Melanie finally visited. She entered my room cautiously, clutching a small bouquet of flowers and looking everywhere but at me. You look terrible, she blurted, then immediately grimaced. Sorry, that came out wrong. Why have you been avoiding me? I asked directly. The medications had dulled my capacity for social niceties. Melanie sat heavily in the visitor's chair, flowers forgotten in her lap. I didn't know what to say, Morgan. Everything is so messed up. Tell me what's going on with Eric. She fidgeted with her wedding ring, twisting it nervously. He's with someone else now. A woman named Vanessa. The words hit me like another car crash. What do you mean, with someone else? We're married. He's been telling people you didn't survive the accident, she whispered, tears forming. He held a small memorial gathering at your apartment last week. I couldn't bring myself to go. The room seemed to tilt sideways. He told people I was dead while I was lying here in the hospital. Melanie nodded miserably. I only found out you were alive when Sarah called me yesterday. Eric blocked all your social media accounts. He changed the locks on your apartment. Show me, I demanded. Show me this woman. Reluctantly, Melanie pulled out her phone and opened Instagram. There he was, my husband, arm around a slender woman with dark hair. They were at an art gallery, champagne glasses in hand, looking for all the world like an established couple. Something about the woman's face triggered an odd sense of familiarity. She was younger than me, maybe mid-20s, stylishly dressed with features that somehow echoed my own. Her name is Vanessa Loran. She's some kind of assistant at the Hayward Gallery, Melanie explained. They met about 3 months ago, according to mutual friends. 3 months. While I was visiting my dying uncle, Eric had been cultivating a relationship with this woman. I felt physically ill. There's more, Melanie added, her voice dropping even lower. People are saying they got married last weekend. Some quick ceremony at the courthouse. Married. My husband had declared me dead and married another woman within days of my accident. The betrayal was so enormous I couldn't process it. Sarah, who had been hovering nearby, stepped in when she saw my heart rate monitor spiking dangerously. I think that's enough for today, she said, firmly guiding Melanie toward the door. I'm so sorry, Morgan, Melanie called back. I should have told you sooner. After she left, Sarah sat with me, her presence steady, as I tried to make sense of what I had learned. You need legal help, she said finally. This is not just betrayal, it's fraud. She was right. With her assistance, I called Benjamin Harrison the next morning. Morgan, I was beginning to worry, the attorney said. I've been trying to reach you about some concerning developments. Let me guess, I said bitterly. My husband has been asking about my inheritance. More than asking. He came to my office claiming to be your next of kin, saying you had passed away in an accident. He brought marriage certificates and what appeared to be death documents, though they didn't pass closer inspection. He's trying to steal my inheritance, I said, the pieces finally clicking into place. It appears so. And he's not working alone. He brought a young woman with him who he introduced as your sister, claiming she should have partial inheritance rights. I don't have a sister, I said automatically, then froze. What was her name? Vanessa something. French surname. My mind raced. The familiar face. The resemblance people had noted between us. The timing of her appearance in Eric's life, just as Uncle James's health had begun to fail. Benjamin, I need you to do some digging into this woman's background. And I need you to come to the hospital tomorrow. I think my husband is planning something, and I need to be prepared. That night I barely slept, my mind piecing together the fragments of this bizarre puzzle. How had Eric known about the inheritance before I told him? Why choose a woman who resembled me to play this con? And why did she look so familiar to me beyond just the physical resemblance? By morning I had a sickening theory forming, one so twisted I could barely contemplate it. I asked Sarah to set up a small camera in my room, ostensibly for security purposes. Then I sent a text to Eric's phone from Melanie's number, which she had let me borrow. I know about the inheritance. Morgan is awake and remembers everything. You need to fix this before she talks. The response came within minutes. We'll handle it today. Delete this message. They were coming. And I would finally get some answers. I spent the morning preparing myself, both mentally and physically, for the confrontation to come. Sarah helped me sit up properly in bed and adjust my appearance so I looked slightly more vulnerable than I actually felt. Dr. Jessica coached me on maintaining emotional control, regardless of what might be said. Remember, you hold the power here, she reminded me. No matter what he says or does, he cannot take that from you unless you allow it. Benjamin arrived at noon, briefcase in hand, and stationed himself in the chair by the window, where he wouldn't be immediately visible to anyone entering. The small camera Sarah had set up was discreetly recording, its tiny lens aimed at the foot of my bed. Are you certain you want to do this today? Benjamin asked, concerned about my still fragile condition. We could handle this through proper legal channels. I need to see his face, I replied. I need to understand why. At precisely 2 o'clock in the afternoon, there was a knock at my door. My heart rate spiked on the monitor, betraying my anxiety despite my composed exterior. Sarah squeezed my hand once before stepping back to stand near the bathroom door. His hair was styled differently, and he wore a new watch that probably cost several $1,000s. The transformation from struggling artist to affluent sophisticate was jarring. His expression as he saw me was not surprise or relief, but annoyance, quickly masked by false concern. "Morgan," he said, his voice theatrical. "You're awake. We've been so worried." "We?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. He glanced back toward the doorway, gesturing impatiently. A slender figure stepped into the room but remained partially hidden behind him. I could only see a glimpse of dark hair and a designer dress. "You remember Vanessa, of course," he said smoothly. "Your cousin's daughter." I said nothing, watching as he moved further into the room, his confidence growing with each step. He had always been an actor at heart, convincing in whatever role he chose to play. Today, he had cast himself as the concerned husband. "The doctors say your memory might be affected by the accident," he continued. "So many things have happened while you've been unconscious." "Like you telling everyone I was dead?" I asked quietly. His step faltered momentarily before he recovered. "A terrible misunderstanding. When they first brought you in, they thought you might not make it. I was devastated. Some people misinterpreted my grief. And the new apartment, the art gallery celebrations, the marriage license?" His eyes narrowed slightly, calculating. "You've been listening to gossip, darling. Not good for your recovery. What matters now is getting you well, and sorting out the financial aspects of your situation." He pulled some papers from his inner pocket. "The doctors mentioned you might not be able to handle your affairs for some time. I've brought some simple forms authorizing me to manage things while you recover." I almost had to admire the performance. If I had been heavily medicated or confused, I might have believed his concerned act. But I could see the coldness behind his eyes, the impatience in the way he held out the papers. "You mean the $11 million I inherited?" I asked bluntly. His expression flickered, surprise quickly masked. "You remember that?" "Yes, of course. Such a blessing but also a responsibility. In your condition, the stress of managing such funds could impede your recovery. How thoughtful of you to worry about that." He smiled, mistaking my calm for compliance. "I have always had your best interests at heart, Morgan. Is that why you blocked my social media accounts, changed our apartment locks, and told my friends I was dead?" Eric's facade began to crack. "You're confused. The medication." "Show her the video, Benjamin," he said suddenly, standing up from his chair. Eric spun around, genuinely startled. "Who the hell are you?" "Don't touch that," Sarah warned, stepping forward. "Hospital security is right outside." The woman who had remained near the doorway finally moved forward, curiosity apparently overcoming caution. As she approached the bed, I got my first clear look at her face. The resemblance was even more striking up close. Even the way she carried herself reminded me of myself at a younger age. Her face paled dramatically as our eyes locked. "Oh my God," she whispered, her voice shaking. "She is my mother." The room went completely silent. "Shut up," he hissed. "Stick to the plan." With trembling hands, she reached into her purse and pulled out a worn photograph. "I have been looking for you my entire life," she said, her voice breaking as she held out the photo for me to see. The image showed a teenage girl holding a newborn baby. Her face was partly obscured but unmistakably a younger version of myself. A photograph I hadn't seen in 17 years, one I thought had been destroyed long ago. As I stared at the evidence of my most carefully guarded secret, the room seemed to spin around me. My hands trembled as I took the photograph from Vanessa. The teenage girl in the image looked so young, so scared. Her eyes red from crying as she held the tiny bundle for what she knew would be the first and last time. "Where did you get this?" I whispered. "The only link I had to my birth mother. I've carried it with me every day since I was old enough to understand what it meant. For once in your life, just stop talking." I looked back at Vanessa, really studying her face. How had I not seen it immediately? Vanessa sat on the edge of my bed, transfixed. "They sent me to stay with a distant aunt during the pregnancy. After you were born, they arranged a closed adoption. I was allowed to hold you once and someone took this picture. I didn't know they had given you a copy. My adoptive parents told me it was the only thing that came with me," Vanessa explained. "They were wonderful people who never hid the fact that I was adopted. When I turned 18, they supported my decision to search for my birth mother. About 3 months ago, he approached me at the gallery where I work. He said he knew who my birth mother was. Eric said nothing, but his expression confirmed my suspicion. I had kept a small wooden box with a few mementos from that period of my life, the hospital bracelet, a tiny hat, and a copy of that photograph. And when did marriage enter the picture? I asked, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. Then I had my accident. And suddenly I was more valuable dead than alive, I concluded. Eric finally broke his silence. Benjamin cleared his throat. Actually, we have quite a bit of evidence, including your attempts to access Morgan's accounts, the falsified death certificates, and now this recorded confession. Not to mention bigamy, as you are still legally married to Morgan. I looked at Eric, really looked at him, seeing him clearly perhaps for the first time. You used me. All those things you said about caring for me, about building a future together. Don't be naive, Eric snapped. I was just expediting the process. Eric's face hardened. You can't prove that. I am so sorry you were dragged into this. She wiped tears from her eyes. I wouldn't advise that, Benjamin said calmly. Hospital security is waiting outside, and I have already filed preliminary charges. Leaving now would only add fleeing to the list. Eric looked wildly around the room like a cornered animal searching for an escape. Morgan, he tried one last time, his voice taking on the gentle tone I had once loved. Officers, this is the man I mentioned. I never stopped thinking about you, I finally said. Not a single day. Years have passed since that day in the hospital. Eric is a distant memory, a closed chapter in a book I no longer read. The estate, once a symbol of a lonely uncle, is now filled with life and laughter. Vanessa completed her psychology degree with honors and now runs our foundation, helping families navigate the complexities of adoption with the compassion born from her own experience. Her adoptive parents, Mark and Diana, are now my dearest friends. The $11 million, which was meant to be a tool for a new life, became so much more. As for me, I found my voice again, not in advertising copy, but in writing stories of resilience. Sometimes I sit on the porch with Vanessa, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. We don't talk much in those moments. We don't need to. The crash was the worst moment of my life, but it led me home. If my journey has resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories of survival and unexpected new beginnings. Share this video with someone who might need a reminder that even after the most devastating crash, it is possible to find your way home.